Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Heidi from My Reading Life, and I'm here today to talk about how I ranked the last 6 books in the nonfiction round of the Booktube Prize. The Booktube Prize, as you well know, is a prize that is exclusively here on YouTube, in Booktube, and it is hosted ably by Robert over at his channel. He has a Booktube Prize channel, but he also has a personal channel, Pages and Pores, and he has been hosting this prize. This is our 5th year this year, and I love reading for the Booktube Prize. I really do. I know you guys have heard me talk about it a million times, but I just love reading books that I never would have picked up on my own or even heard about in some cases. So I read this year exclusively in the nonfiction category. There is also a fiction category. I read all 4 rounds, and I was very, very pleased with the final 6 books that made it through to this last round. I think they are all excellent books. They are uniformly great books. I did not rank any of these books less than a 4-star. Some I had read in previous rounds, and 2 that I had to read for this round in particular I hadn't read before this round. And nothing was less than a 4-star. So it was incredibly hard for me to rank these books. And of course, the results have already been published. I will link to that video down below where Robert discussed who won this prize. But first, before we talk about who won the prize, I am going to go through my rankings from my number 6 position, which is my bottom, to my number 1 position, which is my top. Again, I just have to say, as a caveat, these are all excellent books. I liked every single one of them. I thought they are all really well done, particularly for their what they're trying to set out to do. And I can't say anything bad about them. I just put them in this order for my own reasons, which I will get into as we talk about the 6 books. So in 6th position was... and I'm going to be flipping through my notes here because I won't remember the subtitles if I don't. In 6th position, I put The Escape Artist, The Man Who Broke Out of Auschwitz to Warn the World by Jonathan Friedland. This was a book about a man who was captured by the Nazis and put in a concentration camp and was able to escape with a friend from that concentration camp, and then traveled for a very dangerous route out of where he was in Germany, and tried to warn people about what was really happening in these camps. And it was a very compulsively readable story. I thought it was very well done. It was sort of one of those, adventure type stories where it just gets you hooked. It's very, very narrative in its storytelling style. It reads very much like fiction. And then it was very interesting take because I can't think of the man's name. I will write it up here so that you can understand this person that I'm talking about. He was not able to really get people to take him seriously about what the atrocities that were happening in these camps. And then the last little section of the book is the rest of his life, how he deals with this, living with the fact that he escaped this camp but yet was not able to he felt he wasn't sufficiently able to convince people what was happening in order to save others. Very, very well done. Had to be in my 6th spot, not because it was a bad book, as we've said before, but just because of all of the topics. This was my least favorite topic to read about. I really do not like World War II topics, so that's why I put it in the 6th position. So in number 5 position, I had My Fourth Time We Drowned, Seeking Refuge on the World's Deadliest Migration Route by Sally Hayden. This is a journalist's account of conversations and connections that she made with people who are traveling the migration route out of Africa across the Mediterranean into Europe. But these folks are particularly being blocked from ever entering Europe. They've either gone on boats across the Mediterranean and been turned back, or have been rescued at sea and brought back, mostly to Libya, where they are again put into detention centers and under horrific conditions, very, lack of food, lack of privacy, lack of healthcare, violence of all kinds being perpetrated against these folks. Just harrowing stories. And I thought that the way that this story was structured was really good. where Hayden is really trying to amplify the voices of the people who are experiencing these things in order to show the world what is happening. I also thought that her expose of the UN and how the UN is failing in its mission to protect migrants and is failing to make this this whole system more humane was really eye-opening to me. I didn't know a lot about this particular migration route. I mean, most of what I have read have been stories about migration through South and Central America into Mexico and then trying to enter the US. So this was very eye-opening to me and very impactful to me. It's in my fifth position simply because I thought that Hayden at times sensationalized some of how she was presenting the material, and I felt that it was a bit emotionally manipulative. I understood why she was doing it, but it still is not my favorite way to read this kind of information, this nonfiction information. I prefer to keep you don't need to tug on my heartstrings. I already have empathy for these people, so you don't have to sort of dramatize that aspect of it. So that's why it's in fifth place. In fourth place, this was really hard. The 3 and 4 and the 1 and 2 positions were the hardest for me. So in fourth position, I put Eating to Extinction, The World's Rarest Foods and Why We Need to Save Them by Dan Saldino. I thought this was so excellent. This is divided into different parts. The book is divided into different parts based on the types of food that are being discussed. So, and each section has 3 or 4 examples within it. So, for example, there's a section on cereals, there's a section on vegetables, there's a section on meat, on ocean species, and on and on. It doesn't just address biology or climate change. It also talks about the importance of these food items to the people and to cultures as a whole. It's biodiversity is being lost. And also at the same time, whole cultures are being lost. And it's just there's just so much that we just don't know. There's so much as just in general, the general public, we just are not aware of how simplified our food system has become. Most people go to the grocery store and they pick up their groceries and they just don't understand that it's 4 or 5 or 6 giant companies that are producing all of the food, and it's very monoculture, and it's one species, and it's just put us all on this brink of having the whole thing go to hell in a handbasket. So I thought the way that Saladino put this together was really readable and really informative, and I very much enjoyed it. I found it quite fascinating, and I liked the way that he organized it and structured it, and I was really engaged with the examples that he used. I thought it was an excellent book. And the only reason that it's in fourth place is because the book that I wanted to put in third place, I just felt like it just had touched my heart even more, and I just could not put it through in my top 3. So that's not to say that I didn't think Eating to Extinction was excellent, because I did. So in third place is a book that I had read in a previous round. Let me see if I can find my notes on it. His Name is George Floyd by Robert Samuels and Toulouse Olorunapia, who are Washington Post reporters. And this is ostensibly a biography of George Floyd, the person who started a movement, the Black Lives Matter movement. He didn't really start the movement, but he was the impetus. His death was the impetus for the expansion of that movement in 2020. And George Floyd, who was killed by a police officer, is, his story, his life story is very tragic and very, very much a story that makes you sad about what happened to him personally, but the way that this biography was structured, I thought was so innovative, because the authors not only tell his story, the person's story, but they tell the story of the history of systemic racism in the US and how all these systemic racist structures impact the life of one person, that George Floyd could be any Black person, and that the things that happen to him are happening to all Black people, and that it just makes these sort of endings where they're in a position for somebody else to perpetrate violence upon them for little to no reason. It's just all the more apparent that this could happen to any person at any time, any Black person at any time. And I just thought that the way that they wove the history of racism together with this person's life story to show how these things impact an individual was so, it was just brilliant. I thought it was really, really well done. It really, it shows that, Floyd was not a perfect person by any means, but he also was like, he kept being pushed into smaller and smaller places he could go, right? Like, whereas when you're young and you have the world supposedly is wide open to you, it never was wide open for him, right? And so as he made choices, when he was faced with decision points and he made choices, his path forward became narrower and narrower. And it just is so obvious to me how, outside forces were acting on him in a way that led him to the place where he ended up on the ground underneath the knee of this police officer. Yeah, really just a brilliant book, and I just can't recommend it highly enough. So, and it's in third place only because the top two books were some of the favorite books. I mean, they are in the top books that I've read all year long. So in second place, I have physical copies of the last two books, and these are the two books that I had the hardest time deciding which one to put in second place and which one to put in first place, but it ended up with Paradise Falls in second place and An Immense World in first place. It was an extremely hard decision. Paradise Falls, The True Story of an Environmental Catastrophe by Keith O'Brien. This book was so fabulous. I read this book in its entirety, and it's not a small book, in one 24-hour time period. It is explosive. It is narrative nonfiction at its best. It does exactly what it says it's going to do. It's well written. It sucks you in. And this is telling the story of in the 1970s in Niagara Falls, New York, when people in a particular community became aware that they were living on top of a toxic waste site, which was Love Canal. And this toxic waste site, which had been, these companies had dumped these chemicals into the ground and covered them up. And then the town had purchased the land and built a school on top of it, and a neighborhood had grown up around it, and these people were getting sick. And once they figured out what was making them sick, how they fought back. And this is a story of that community. It's a story of how women banded together to fight for the safety of their children and their families. It is the story of the start of the EPA, the United States Environmental Protection Agency. It is just a gripping story, and I could not put it down. I absolutely loved it. I highly recommend it. I think it would make a great movie. And the only reason why it's not my number one book, and it could, at any given day, it could have been my number one book, but on the day I ranked them, it lost out to my number one book, and the winner of this year's Booktube Prize. I am happy to say that I was finally in sync with the rest of the judges for the Booktube Prize. An Immense World, How Animal Senses Reveal the Hidden Realms Around Us by Ed Yong. This is a brilliant science nonfiction book. This is exactly what you want science nonfiction to be. Ed Yong tells a great story. He's an excellent writer. He explains complex ideas in a very understandable way. He goes through the entire animal kingdom and shows us how different living beings perceive the world around them. As humans, we are so prone to think that the way that we perceive the world is the way that the world is. But Ed Yong gives us so many examples of how other creatures perceive the world in these astounding ways that we just have no concept of, whether it's through infrared or ultrasound, or there's just all these senses that we just don't possess, that animals do possess. And I just thought that this was brilliantly done. It was absolutely fascinating. I can't wait to reread this book, which is the biggest sign to me that it is a 5-star read and I am going to have it on my shelves forever and I'm going to love the book, is when I am like, I know I'm going to want to reread this because there's so much in here and it's so fabulous. And I will want to come back to this. So for once, I agreed with my fellow judges about the best book, and this is the book that won for 2023 for the Booktube Prize, which I am thrilled about. And I will say, just in general, overall, the fact that my top first and second place books were science-related nonfiction. Eating to Extinction is a science-related nonfiction. All three of those books being in the top 6 makes this science lover so happy. This was the year for people who love science nonfiction, I think, in the Booktube Prize. And I am so happy and so satisfied that those books finally got the recognition that I think they deserve. So yeah, I was really thrilled with how this round of the Booktube Prize turned out. But every year, it's so much fun. So please join us in 2024. If you have been thinking about being a judge for the Booktube Prize, Robert would encourage you to join us. The signups are open. I will link that also in the description box below so that you can go ahead and sign up to be a judge for the Booktube Prize. You don't have to make videos on Booktube. You just have to be a participant in, talking about books online, whether you do that through the comments section on YouTube, whether you have an Instagram account or some other social media account where you talk about books. We would love for you to join us. And like I said, signups are open from now until the end of December. And once they close, that will be it. You won't be able to join in with us. And I would love to have you join in with us, particularly in the nonfiction category, which I think is the best category. So I hope that you will have been inspired to pick up one of these 6 books. They're all fantastic books. They are all well worth your time. As always, I loved my time reading for the Booktube Prize. I'm already excited about reading for the 2024 Booktube Prize. I hope you will join us. I hope you are all doing well and finding some great books to read, and I will talk to you later.